Late at night in the West End, streetlights flickered over the cracked, peeling sidewalk. Andre Thompson, a black homeless veteran, was rummaging through the trash behind a convenience store for scraps when sirens cut through the silence. "Stop!" A police voice ripped the stillness. Before he could react, he was running, footsteps thundering behind him like relentless echoes of his past. But this time, as he dashed through a dark alley, he tripped over something unexpected, a small, cold metal box. Inside, an espionage device, and the data it contained could shake the entire establishment to its core. Will Andre keep running, or stand his ground and fight? The answer could alter the fate of countless souls who once served this nation. Stay tuned to the end, and subscribe to Veteran Best Stories, so you never miss these forgotten tales. Andre could no longer recall the last time he'd slept on a real bed. Not the cardboard laid beneath a bridge, not the wooden benches in the park, nor the scorching pavement of a summer sidewalk, but a bed with a soft mattress and a covering where a person could lie down without fear. How many nights had it been? He had no idea. Time for Andre now was little more than the endless cycle of hunger, cold, and evasion. He had once been a soldier. In that seemingly distant past, he wore a uniform, stood shoulder to shoulder with his comrades, endured the battlefield and earned medals in recognition. Back then, pride and honor drove him forward in the harshest circumstances. But when the war ended, glory did not remain, only forgetfulness. And when a hero's tears dried in silence, all Andre had left was a tattered backpack, shoes worn thin at the soles, and a dwindling faith in humanity. That night, the sky seemed to pour out the last of autumn, relentless rain, bone-chilling cold. Andre curled up beneath the awning of an old gas station. The only warmth came from a distant smokestack and the memory of a cup of coffee long gone cold. Then sirens wailed, tearing through the fragile quiet as if angered by his very existence. Beams of white light stabbed at his eyes, harsh, unrelenting. Instinct took over before reason could intervene. Andre sprang up, sprinting through the downpour like a shadow. Not because he'd committed a crime. His pockets held only a few coins, a ragged scarf, and soggy military papers, but because someone like him, with this skin, this appearance, in a city quick to blame, was always an easy target. No justification needed. Mere presence was enough to trigger suspicion. Rain lashed his face like whips. Each step slid on the icy road. His soaked shoes slapped the pavement in futile protest. Andre darted into narrow, pitch-black alleys where streetlights could not reach. Behind him, the pounding footsteps chased him like echoes of the past, urgent, menacing, and impossible to shake. Then, suddenly, he stumbled. A brick protruding from the mud sent his body careening forward, slamming into the hard ground. Pain shot from his shoulder down his back. His hand slid across the slick mud, striking something. Cold, solid, and utterly unfamiliar. A metal object, small and rectangular. A black box. Andre lay there, gasping for breath as the rain continued its furious downpour. He grasped the object with both hands, pulling it toward him. The rain made it slippery, yet he would not let go. In that strange moment, between ragged breaths and distant sirens, he knew this was no ordinary refuse. It was heavy, substantial, and important in a way words could not explain. He sat up, huddling in the shadows of crumbling walls, his eyes fixed on the black box as if it could answer questions he had never dared ask. His fingers, stiff from the cold, traced its smooth surface. No logos, no labels, only a single scratch. Small, deep, like someone had tried to force it open and failed. Andre stared at the box, overwhelmed by a foreign sensation. Not curiosity, but a premonition. Like the day he'd received his first covert mission when no one knew what lay ahead. Something about this tiny object shifted his heartbeat, as if fate, long turned away from him, had suddenly glanced back. He no longer heard sirens, no longer the pounding footsteps in pursuit. Everything around him blurred in the rain, leaving only him and the box, two castaways in a world that had forgotten them. Andre tightened his grip on the metal object, then lifted his head to the slate-gray sky. The rain showed no sign of relenting, yet now it no longer shook him. In the chill seeping through his thin jacket, a small warmth flickered. Not in his body, but deeper. The belief that even discarded, he still mattered. And the box, though its contents remained a mystery, was like him, buried, waiting to be found. He rose unsteadily, clutching the box to his chest, as though protecting a piece of his soul. Andre's next steps, though slow, were no longer driven by flight. They carried an unspoken question and a silent promise. If this box held the truth, he would not let it be buried again. And you, my dear audience, let's wait together for the next twist that will leave you amazed. So, before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see friends joining us from all around the world. The small box rested in Andre's palm. Mud still clung to its edges. Under the distant flickering streetlight, he saw a tiny indicator light blinking, a cold, steady blue, like the heartbeat of something still alive. He turned it gently. There was no rattle of loose metal, no sign of internal movement. It was intact, as if, despite years buried in the earth, it had waited for the right hands to find it. Andre had never seen a device like this in his service. It was not a standard military tool, nor any communication gear he'd been trained on. He crouched beneath the awning of an abandoned warehouse. His hand trembled. Part of him wanted to toss it aside, to pretend he'd never picked up anything. But instincts honed on battlefields kept him rooted. He took a deep breath and began to open the box. A soft click sounded as the lid popped free. Inside lay a neat circuit board, a small screen at its center, and a digital drive firmly seated in its port. The indicator light blinked faster. The screen flickered to life, revealing blurred text. Record, Zone 17, targets, Anderson, Lewis, Thompson. In that instant, the world froze. Andre's eyes darted to the final name on the list. His finger stilled on the box's rim. Thompson, his own surname, no middle name, no image. But he knew this was no coincidence. It could not be. He swiped the screen. Data files appeared, audio clips, video snippets, concise but damning logs. In the darkness, he sat motionless, absorbing every sound from that tiny device. A recorded call, a quivering male voice pleading for continued medical support, only to be denied for invalid records. A video clip showing a middle-aged man at an ATM, unaware he was being filmed remotely. A note. Subject exceeded allowable movement. Benefits cut next month. Then internal communications, uncensored, unmasked. Verify Thompson's file, still no next of kin. Purge VA registration, note loss of contact. Keep target off the radar. Avoid press. Each word drove into Andre's chest. He no longer heard the rain, nor felt the cold. His senses narrowed to one force, rage pent up over years of silence. He had once believed himself a failure, abandoned by society. But now he knew. He had been targeted, not for wrongdoing, but for his skin, for his past, for being a veteran, and for having no one to stand with him. This box, somehow, had survived to reach him. No one knew why it was buried, or who had placed it there. But Andre understood one thing. It was no accident. It was evidence. A reminder that he had not imagined everything. And if it fell into someone else's hands, they might never dare to speak. He sat motionless in the rain, the screen's glow reflecting off his soaked face. Whether from rain or tears, he could not tell. All these years, he'd lived in the darkness of war and indifference. Now he stood at a new threshold, no longer facing bullets, but a battle just as ruthless. To keep running, as he always had, meant preserving a brittle safety. He might survive, but forever as a ghost. To rise up and confront meant risking everything, stepping into the light to face the very system that buried him, daring to expose what no one wanted to see. Andre looked at the box once more, then pressed it against his chest. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he felt he had a choice, a chance few ever receive. And he understood. If he did nothing, no one would. Night continued to cloak the city. The rain fell steadily, as if nothing had happened. But beneath that quiet awning, a man had rediscovered his reason to move forward, not simply to survive, but for the truth. Dear viewers, please grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and stay tuned. The story still holds surprises. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. We love seeing friends join us from all around the world. Comment 1. If you're enjoying this story, it helps us bring you even more great tales. Andre returned to the one place in the city where he had ever felt visible. A worn sidewalk at corner 12 in front of a small cafe where passers-by usually averted their eyes. Except for one. Sam, a freelance journalist with salt and pepper hair and eyes sharp enough to see through society's masks. He was the man who'd handed Andre a hot meal last winter when no one else bothered to stop, not out of pity, but because he wanted to listen. Andre stepped into the cafe, drenched and silent. Inside, Sam was typing at his laptop, as he did every afternoon. The screen's glow reflected off his glasses. When Andre approached, Sam looked up. Surprise flickered, then settled into focused attention. No words were needed. Andre simply placed the box on the table, his hand still trembling from the cold. His voice was hoarse, as if the rain still weighed on his chest. "I've got this." Sam said nothing at first. He laid a hand on the device, turning it in his palm as if reacquainting himself with something unexplainable. When he powered it on, the data lines appeared, rekindling a familiar sensation, the feeling known only to those who'd stood in battlefields, who'd dug through layers of power's deceit. He read each entry. His ears caught the fractured audio clips. Then his expression shifted, not to fear, but to the stunned stillness of a man who has just opened a door onto an abyss he's not sure he's ready to enter. "This," Sam whispered, as if fearing the cafe might collapse at the words. "If it's real, it's a ticking bomb." A surveillance device, a list of veterans, mostly men of color, monitored, stripped of rights, manipulated by a program absent from public records. Sam had never seen anything so sophisticated. logs, videos, internal directives, all encrypted and hidden within a tiny object, only large enough to be forgotten. The more he read, the more he listened, a strange sensation crept into Andre's chest. Not ordinary fear, but a new awareness of himself. He still didn't understand why his name appeared on that list, nor who had placed the box exactly where he would stumble upon it. But he knew. This was no longer his alone to bear. He had stepped into a story larger, deeper, and far more dangerous than anything he had ever imagined. Sam, seasoned by frontline reporting and threats from the powerful, immediately launched an investigation. But the deeper he dug, the stranger the contradictions became. Some names on the device were recorded as deceased, others had vanished from every official system. Veterans' records were altered, benefits cut without cause, and each data entry led to baffling dead ends, as if someone were erasing every trace in real time. He searched for Andre's records and found nothing but a faded service statement, as if Andre's entire military past had been restructured. No deployment orders, no training reports, no medical notes. Andre, once present on the battlefield, no longer existed in any military database, just an empty name. "You're not alone," Sam said, his eyes now void of doubt. "Someone wanted you erased. But the more important question was, who left that box? And why Andre? There were no witnesses, no cameras in the abandoned lot, no sign of a trap. Yet clearly someone knew Andre would come, or at least hoped a man like him would find it, as if everything were orchestrated, not to bury, but to awaken. Andre had no answers, but deep inside, he felt one thing unmistakably. His years of invisibility had not been in vain. Perhaps it was that very invisibility that made him the perfect bearer of this truth. No family to lose, nothing to hide, only courage forged in cold nights, in loneliness, and in the fragile faith that he still mattered. The small box on the table was no longer just an object. It was a detonator. And Andre, who had once lived only to survive, had become the first link in a chain reaction no one could predict. He would not run again. Whatever lay ahead, he knew. This time, he would stand his ground. Not as a hunted man, but as someone stepping out of the shadows, carrying a truth a whole system had tried to bury for years. The news began to leak like the first drops before a flood. One audio clip, then two, then three, released online and spreading at lightning speed. The name Andre Thompson, once drifting on society's margins, suddenly surfaced, tossed about in a swell of controversy, but not as a whistleblower or a survivor bearing truth. Instead, as a distorted shadow, twisted by toxic comments, anonymous posts, and hidden accounts attacking him from every angle. They labeled him a liar. They spread rumors that he was once addicted, dishonorably discharged for disciplinary infractions. Lies repeated without evidence, only volume enough to drown out reality. Each day, Andre faced not only the ghosts of his past, but the warped image others were crafting of him. Sam, his sole ally, felt the darkness closing in as well. Unanswered calls, cars parked too long outside his home. Then one night, that invisible shadow struck. Andre's temporary refuge, a small room behind an abandoned building, was ransacked, the door smashed in, his few possessions thrown about, a message scrawled in silence. "We know where you are." That same night, as Sam and Andre left a roadside diner, an unmarked black SUV barreled toward them at reckless speed. Tires screeched on the wet pavement. In a heartbeat, They rolled onto the grass verge, hearts pounding in the dark. The vehicle did not stop. It did not look back, vanishing as if it never existed. Yet its message was unmistakable. This was no longer a threat. Sam, hardened by the distortion of truth in many investigations, appeared unsettled for the first time. He spoke of handing the device to the FBI, hoping a larger agency could shield them, that its authority might expose everything. But Andre hesitated. In his eyes, that very system was no longer worthy of trust. Once it had issued his uniform, then stripped away his dignity. Once it promised protection, then abandoned him on damp curbsides. "I used to believe in that system," he said quietly, his voice steady as the rain falling outside the diner's awning. "It betrayed me once." Silence stretched between them. Sam said nothing. He understood. Some wounds need not be healed, only respected. The next morning, everything worsened. A fellow veteran who had helped verify part of the device's data suddenly disappeared. No one saw him leave the boarding house. When a caseworker arrived, his room was empty. His belongings remained. But on the adjoining wall was something no one wanted to see. A smear of blood, and scrawled beneath it in dark red, "Shut up." Bad news cut into Andre like a cold blade to the chest. He did not cry or rage. He only sat in silence for a long moment, staring into the invisible void before him, where so many had been swallowed without a trace. Men like him, trained to fight, to survive, were now hunted in the very homeland they had bled to protect. There was no room for hesitation, no gray zone in which to hide. Andre understood. If he remained silent, every spark of effort would be extinguished. If he stepped back, the truth in his hands would be buried once more, like those who came before, like the friend who had vanished without farewell. In the gathering darkness, amid vague fears becoming tangible threats, Andre saw the path ahead. It promised no safety, but it was the only way forward. For the first time, after years of wandering, Andre felt he was no longer running. He had stood still, been struck down, been defamed. But now he had a choice: to stand up. Not for glory, not for praise, but to shield the lost, the frightened, and those who never had a chance to tell their own stories. He understood clearly. From this moment on, there was no turning back. Yet perhaps he had never been meant to retreat. Sam knew it was time to cross the line of safety. He could not wait any longer. He could no longer dodge. He called an independent news channel, one of the few outlets still known for integrity amid the roar of manipulative media. They met in a small studio, hidden behind warehouse rows on the city's edge. No stage lights, no lavish backdrops, only white illumination, cameras, and a drive containing the whole truth. The broadcast began in silence. No music, no dramatic narration, only a steady voice guiding viewers through each data file. Harsh audio clips, clandestine video footage, screen captures of surveillance orders dispatched with cold precision. Each piece of evidence appeared like a surgical incision, gradually exposing the system that had operated in the shadows for years. A covert monitoring program targeting veterans, especially people of color, the homeless, without advocates. The feature was titled simply, "The Watched Warrior." No flourishes, no metaphors, yet its impact spread like wildfire through dry timber. Within 24 hours, it amassed millions of views. Social platforms erupted with hashtags "Justice for Veterans" and Thompson truth. Users reshared every clip, every quote. Conversations ignited, not just online, but in cafes, classrooms, and family dinner tables. Across major cities, a wave of outrage surged. Thousands took to the streets, holding banners not merely to defend one man, but to proclaim a truth buried for too long. Protesters of every race and background marched. Most striking were those wearing worn jackets, faded dog tags, unit caps frayed by time. Congress, under immense public pressure, could no longer remain silent. A special committee was formed. Politicians spoke on live television, pledging comprehensive investigations. Yet no matter how many statements they issued, the public knew. The truth had not originated in those hearing rooms. It had begun with one man and one device. Andre did not appear on screen. He did not speak out. He stayed behind it all, in the crowd's shadow. Hood pulled low, shoulders stooped, eyes rimmed red. No one recognized him as the spark of it all. No one called his name amid the chants and megaphones. But to Andre, none of that mattered. He needed no spotlight. He only needed real change. And in a moment, as he looked across the masses marching down the avenue, he saw what he had long believed lost. A circle of veterans, black, white, Latino, linking hands. They said nothing. They simply looked at each other. Then they marched together. A simple gesture, yet one that transcended any rallying cry. A recognition, a silent apology, a message. You are not alone. Andre felt something well up in his chest. It was not joy, nor was it triumph, but relief, as if a decades-old burden had finally slipped from his back. In those reddened eyes, for the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that silence was no longer his fate. That tiny device he'd stumbled upon on a rainy night was no longer mere evidence. It had become a symbol, not just of an investigation, but of a movement, a reminder that truth, no matter how deeply buried, can surface if someone has the courage to hold on to it. And Andre, once a nameless drifter, hunted like a shadow, dismissed as a burden, was now the seed of change, not a hero in textbooks, nor a speaker before thousands, but the quiet figure behind the scenes, bearing the scars of a generation, and offering the world a chance to listen. And this time, the world did listen. A year has passed since those first data files went public, and the public finally forced the government to face the truth. In a live-streamed White House press briefing, the spokesperson stood before dozens of cameras and admitted the Veterans Surveillance Program was real. A secret unit, operating beyond legal oversight, had amassed data, monitored, and manipulated benefit records for hundreds of veterans, especially people of color, the homeless, the voiceless. That confession rocked the nation. What had been dismissed as conspiracy was now official record. The investigation widened. Mid-level defense and welfare officials were indicted, all the way up to the shadowy operatives who ran the network. A special fund, Valor Reclaimed, was established to support homeless veterans, not just with money, but with healthcare, counseling, and access to the justice they'd been denied. Andre Thompson's name appeared in every bulletin. Editorials called him the spark of change. Yet in all the public attention, Andre said nothing. He never spoke on camera. He refused medals, refused special government assistance. To him, the journey had never been about recognition. And now, as eyes drifted back to elections and new congressional sessions, he slipped quietly out of the city. Andre moved to a peaceful rural community farm for veterans coping with trauma. No press, no headlines. Just former soldiers, black, white, Latino, Asian, tending gardens, building cabins, sharing long-buried dreams. For them, the war was over, but the wounds remained. Andre didn't preach or claim credit. He simply helped build the dining hall, planted vegetables, and sat by the campfire each night to listen. Each week, he wrote handwritten letters to old comrades, those who had survived the darkest days alongside him. In every letter, he wrote the same line: "We still matter. They cannot erase us." Simple words, yet carrying a lifetime's defense against oblivion. Sometimes a resident would recognize him from an old photo or a reprinted news clipping. They'd ask after his story, and he'd only smile and shake his head. For Andre, his silence was no longer fleeing. It was a choice to live, to heal, to keep moving forward without the burden of spotlights and public noise. Andre's story did not end with applause or national anthems at a medal ceremony. It ended in the quiet of a man who chose to stand up, not for reward, but for what was right. A man once deemed invisible, a burden, became the catalyst that woke an entire system. And that is what makes his story worth remembering. In a world that often honors only the loudest voices, Andre reminds us of the power of resilient silence, that sometimes the smallest, nameless among us hold the key to shaking a system rotten from within. If you believe justice should not be the privilege of a few, if you believe truth still has a place in this world, share Andre's story and subscribe to Veteran Best Stories, where we continue to shine light on lives the world tried to forget.